Okay, thank you, Rabbi Ezra. Thank you all for being here tonight. I'm going to turn it over in just a few moments to my dear friend, to Shai, who I am so honored. We are also honored that you are here and to be able to talk about the book together. It's just a big, big honor for us. Thank you. I also just would like to thank a couple of people. First of all, I want to welcome good friend Ari Ackerman, also standing, holding up one of the pillars here at MJE, as he does for the Jewish people. And I want to thank Rabbi Ezra and the entire MJE staff, Rifki and Jack and Dovi and Chani and everyone else. Ezra mentioned Jill. Where's Yoel? Yoel, thank you so much for all the hard work. I want to thank also Yair, who is helping us with CSS security. Very, very important. And I want to welcome also as we say in French, my mechutim, the in-laws, Ezra's beautiful in-laws that are here. And Rabbi Shalom is on his way up from Great Neck. It's a big, big honor to have you guys. I thank my kids in the book, because each and every one of them, Yosef, Ezra, Yehuda, and Abigail, all contributed greatly to the book in substance, but none of this would have happened without Jill. And I just really want to start by saying thank you. With your permission, I think we have a tradition, an age-old tradition, to try to bring some light to darkness. So I'd like to dedicate our conversation and whatever Torah comes out of this to the memory of Charlie Kirk, who I followed very closely. He was an incredible voice for an important perspective, that whether or not you agreed with that perspective needs to be put out there in our American society. And it's a very, very sad day in American history, actually. But we do believe in the eternity of the soul, and I know he believed in that. And so the Torah and the conversation we have should serve as an aliyat neshama, as an elevation for his soul. I want to, again, thank Shai.
No, we said you're never...
Okay, I'm going to stop thanking. I'll tell you, Shai makes me a little nervous because I was once interviewed for his podcast. He has an unbelievable podcast. How many of you have listened, seen Dr. Shai Davidai's podcast? He won't tell you the questions that he's going to ask you before you come on his podcast. And I figured since I'm running the show here, I could get the questions here. But he still wouldn't tell me the questions. So I've been like on shpilkes for the last week. What's this man going to ask me? But I'm turning it over to you, Shai.
Well, thank you so much. I'll say just two things. One, it was really hot when I came in, but I was wearing a jacket, so I was very formal for this. I really tried, but now I'm in a t-shirt. The other thing is, will someone tell me, because a professor and a rabbi, we can keep talking for hours. Who's going to keep time? Just kind of signal when we have to stop. But I'm gonna trust you. So I was gonna say that I really I stayed up not all night, but a lot of last night reading the book. Yoel got me the book at 9:30 p.m. And like a good professor, I did my reading before coming. Like a bad professor, I only started the night before. So these questions are not rehearsed. And we're not going to go into everything in the book, because the whole point is that you read the book and engage with the book yourself. But I just have to say how incredible it is to have a physical copy of something that you can look and read. And we're so used to 10 seconds, 20-second videos, short commentaries, and actually sitting and thinking about the topics of God, Torah, Shabbat, mitzvahs, Tikkun Olam. We're going to get into a lot of that. Even if you disagree, you have a different perspective. Just sitting there and thinking about it is so incredible. So thank you for giving us that opportunity. I'm going to start with something that I think is interesting because there's a lot of, for those of you who haven't seen the book yet, it's filled with a lot of wisdom. There's a lot of stories. There's a lot of interesting quotes. I want to start with this short story that's in the book, if I may. There is a story told of a little boy who would run into the forest when it was time to pray. After the father saw his son do this a few times, he asked, "Son, why do you feel the need to run into the forest every time you pray? Don't you know God is the same everywhere?" "Yes, I know," the boy answered, "but I am not. We're not the same everywhere. Our surroundings affect us. That is one reason Jewish tradition mandates praying with a community in a public setting called a synagogue." So since we're here in your community, what kind of a person are you here when you enter the doors of MJE?
Whoa.
I told you. I told you.
I like to think I'm, first of all, that was great, and that's one of my favorite stories. It's the Kutzker, great Hasidic Rebbe. And I also spoke on the same page of a little picture of the koi fish there.
Right.
Because we're different in different surroundings. I can't think of any other reason why somebody would blow, I don't know, $150 a month to join the gym if you can buy the equipment yourself for less than that amount and just work out at home. There's something about the environment. We're products of our environment. And we poo-poo it sometimes, like who we hang out with, the kind of influences that are in our lives. So I talked about the koi fish because they're small. But when you put a koi fish into a larger pond, it actually grows. And if you put it into a larger pond, you can get a koi fish going from 6 inches to 3 feet, depending on the kind of environment the koi fish is swimming around in. And we're not so different. And that's why we come to shul, because fundamentally, and I made a big deal about this during COVID, I was telling people just because we can't get together to pray doesn't mean you shouldn't daven at home. Because fundamentally, prayer is a very intimate experience. And davening with a minyan is very important. Let me make that clear. Okay? I want to put myself and this organization out of business. Praying in a synagogue is incredibly important, but you do not need a synagogue to pray. You can pray what's called biyachidut, alone, individually. The reason we come to synagogue is not for the fashion show or not even the great kiddush, cholent afterwards. We come because we are inspired by each other. And when you see someone else and they're closing their eyes and they're praying, or you hear something, or there's a Cafe Connect going on in the next room, Rivki's giving it, or Chazan Arni is just, God, it's beautiful. There's just something very important about the community aspect to tefillah. So I like to think, to answer your question, that I'm a better Jew when I come here. I would choose to daven at MJE over every other shul. I like once in a while going to some little shtibel where it feels like you're walking into 19th century Poland, that put the talis over my head and get lost in the prayers. But I prefer being here because it's elevating.
One of the things that's really interesting in this book is, you're talking about one thing in each chapter, right? There's a chapter about prayer, but that chapter is about 30, 40 pages long, and there's so many small snippets. And one of the things that I never really thought about until you kind of pointed that out in the book is that every day, the Jews were supposed to pray Amidah and the 18, right? And it's written in the plural form, which forces us to be with other people. Yeah. It almost doesn't make sense to say anachnu and talking about us when you're by yourself. Now, of course, you can, but doesn't mean that you should. It's all about being together.
Yeah.
So I must say that when I come into this room, I feel a little bit of a different person as well. I don't know if I'm a better person, but I'm a different person, hoping to be better. So I asked you this yesterday. This is the one question that I told you I'm going to ask you, which is, can you tell a little bit about the process of writing this book? Because you started this book before October 7th.
Right.
What led you to write this specific book?
So this is something actually you inspired me. Shai, because there are a couple of new voices that have come out. I want to say out of the woodwork. I don't think you were in the woodwork before October 7th, but one of the very positive things and results of October 7th is someone like yourself going from being not only a professor at an Ivy League university, but becoming or expressing tremendous pride in your Jewish identity and not accepting the things that you were watching going on around you. And when October 7th hit, and I saw that these voices were coming out, I asked myself, like everyone did, like, what can I do? And I started getting questions. What does it mean to be Jewish? What is it that we're trying to defend? Because it's a little uncomfortable when you get pushed to the wall and and someone is calling you something nasty because you're a Zionist or you believe in the state of Israel, or you even affiliate with the Jewish community proudly, wear your chai, your kippah. And then thoughtful people have been asking this question right here at MGE. What is it that defines me? Is it a Jew? Am I just some other ethnicity? So I just said, we got to put this stuff down. And I tried, this was my attention before October 7th. I was very influenced by a number of my teachers and mentors. And I have them in this book. By the way, I just have to completely off. I didn't say thank you. He's not here tonight. But my dear friend, Omri and Jackie Dahan, sponsored this entire series. And I want to thank them. They're not here. I meant to thank them at the outset. It's called the Dahan Family Edition. Jackie and Omri were participants here at MG for many, many years. Omri's going to actually be here, not this Shabbat, but the next, so you can thank him. And he hasn't even seen the book yet. But there were a couple of classic basic Judaism books out there. Chaim Levi Hadanin wrote To Be a Jew. How many of you guys have heard To Be a Jew? Herman Wouk famously wrote the book This Is My God. Aryeh Kaplan just wrote and just the most beautiful, basic stuff that people could internalize. But they're old, and I wanted to write something a little more for the 21st century and for 20s and 30s. So I was planning on doing that before, and then it became like an urgent need to give something to someone and say, here's what we believe in. Here are 6 fundamental topics of Judaism that Jews have literally given their lives up to protect. Their belief in a one and only, their belief in the Torah and the wisdom, authenticity, divinity of the Torah, observing Shabbat, giving tzedakah, tikkun olam. This is what it means to be a Jew. And it lit a fire.
Have you found that your views, your personal views, as Mark, not as Rabbi WIldes, have changed, developed about what it means to be a Jew post-October 7th?
I think the last chapter is challenging for me. It's on Tikkun Olam. I was always a big advocate of being, as it says in the book of Isaiah, an Or LaGoyim, part of this nation that's supposed to be a light to the world. And we're supposed to inspire other people and help other people. And at the beginning of the chapter, I detail how many times Israel sends relief rescue teams to Haiti and to Nepal after every, and I'm so proud of that. It gives me chills. Gives Mark chills. And I got a little jaded after October 7th. I'm like, it's time to take care of our own. We're out there for everyone else, and look what's going on. It's one thing to be attacked by your enemies. That's not new. But it's another thing to not be defended by your friends or people we thought were our friends. And there was like a sort of a dark cloud that was hovering over the Tikkun Olam. But we're optimists. And my friend Rabbi Meir Soloveitchik, who's a great rabbi and scholar, said it's the Holocaust survivors sitting at the Seder who still says L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, and he still gets up and helps people that are not Jewish, even though look what he went through. And we're optimists. We don't give up. We don't give up in Israel, and we don't give up on humanity.
And I think where a pessimist would say the world is broken, the optimist would say, yes, the world is broken. That's why we need to fix it.
Yeah.
If it wasn't broken, we'd have nothing to fix.
Yeah.
I do want to ask you about that because you devote an entire chapter for Tikkun Olam, and yet you devote an entire other chapter on charity and tzedakah. In my uneducated view, I always saw them as the same. It was part and parcel. You know, how do you fix the world? You talk a lot about small acts of kindness and how you build them into a bigger act of kindness. Why did you devote two different chapters?
Because I think they're different categories. Chesed and tzedakah. Chesed is what we do with our own two hands to help people. It's the time we spend visiting the sick, inviting people to our home on Shabbat. It's someone, God forbid, loses a loved one, we pay a shiva call. That's how you live your life as a Jew within our own community. Tikkun Olam, although there are some overlaps, is what we do, I think, for the rest of the world. Now, I made it clear also that there are two other references to Tikkun Olam that we may not be aware of. Number one, there's a Kabbalistic reference to Tikkun Olam. You just said that the world was purposely broken. If you're familiar with the Lurianic Kabbalistic system of Shvirat HaKelim, the broken vessels, that God purposely filled the world with too much of His light, and they broke, and we have to repair them. And every mitzvah that we do is a kiyum, is somehow a fulfillment in Tikkun Olam. And there's a legal component. The legal component is that there are problems and issues. So, for example, if you're familiar with the great sage, the Talmudic sage Hillel, he invented this legal device called the Prisbal, because during the Shemitah year, the Torah demands we let all of our loans go, and people stop loaning to loan. It's a mitzvah to loan to someone who's in need. So he created the Prisbal as a way to keep wealthier people loaning to poor people without them being penalized, if you will, on the Shemitah year. And there's a whole category of tikkunim, if you will, rabbinic devices that have been developed throughout the centuries as a tikkun olam. So it's a much broader term than just, not just than, saving the world, if you will.
Yeah. No, that's really nice. So I think I know the answer to this, but I want to test myself. What do you want people to get out of this book? What's your ideal audience or the ideal reader when they put down the book at page, let me just make sure that I get this right, 240, 249 or 48. They put it down. What do you want them to do next?
289. Okay.
Well, I skipped the
I
notes.
want them, first of all, I want to thank Rabbi Jack, who's here. He's the one who convinced me to call the book The Jewish Experience. And the reason we call it The Jewish Experience is because we call this place Manhattan Jewish Experience. And that my sister-in-law Amy gets credit for, because we were having this conversation many Pesachs ago. I didn't want to just present, here's what Judaism says. I wanted it to be an experience. So that's number one. I want people, when they read this, to have some kind of experience with the soul, not just Jewish thought and practice. A lot of people know what Judaism has to say about a lot of stuff. But how many of us really can claim that we can get to the soul of it? Because knowing what Torah says is not enough to inspire commitment. You have to get into the kishkas, if you will. You got to get into the soul of what it means to think and live as a Jew. What I would love, even if it's just on a little level, that when they read the chapter on Torah, and they read the chapter on kindness and charity or Shabbat, to get a little smitchik, if you will, of the soul, of the feel of Shabbos. Now, you can't get that from a book entirely. You have to come. But that's really what I'm hoping people will come away with.
And the other related question to the title, because you brought up the title, there are about 16 million Jews, and I've always operated under the assumption that there's no one Jewish experience, that this book could have easily been called A Jewish Experience, and yet you intentionally chose the Jewish experience, meaning it. Can you expand more on that?
That was on purpose also. And that's a really good. That's
And you can't blame your sister-in-law.
No, she didn't have that in mind. So we have this concept in Torah called Shivim Panim LeTorah, 70 faces of the Torah. There are 70 different ways. Now that doesn't mean that I can just say, hey, I love this idea, I found it in some book, and I'm going to project my Judaism into that. And we often do that. We like to rewrite our religion in our own image. Right. So I do think there is a Jewish experience. I think there are authentically Jewish topics like Shabbat. There are a lot of different ways to observe Shabbat and a lot of different levels of observing Shabbat. I want to recognize the presence of my dear friend Rabbi Pinney. Rabbi Pinney's got an incredible halacha chat. And one of the things you see on his chat when he's answering a question is the layers, just within even the halachic legal system of Judaism. So I do think that there is an ideal way of observing the Sabbath. I do. I think there's an ideal way of paying a shiva call, of visiting the sick. But there are different ways, there are different things you're going to bring to that, because everyone's personality is different, and you and I think differently. And by virtue of the fact, and the Talmud says this, that we have different fingerprints, and our thought processes are distinct and disparate from one another, we are going to approach the same mitzvah differently. But I do believe in the authenticity of the Torah in outlining what that path should be. And if we veer from that, we run the risk of having everybody's Judaism is different. Right. And we have no achdus then. We have no true unity. And it also, I think, compromises the unity of God himself that gives us this path.
And, you know, one thing, you can read this book as a diatribe about Jewish thought, Jewish wisdom. But another way to read this book is almost like a how-to book, right? If you look at the chapter on prayer, you could have easily said, okay, so in the morning we do this, and then we say Amidah. You say, no. Here's exactly the order. Here's how we do it. And when you talk about Shabbat, it really, someone who's never an alien who lands on Earth picks up your book can do Shabbat now.
That was my goal in the how-to section.
But it's on the one hand, it's very inspiring. On the other hand, it can be a bit daunting, right? For someone who's just starting off, who wants the experience, but is not fully entrenched in it yet, they can read all the different things you have to do on Shabbat. Say, that's too much. I'm going to check my phone. How would you recommend for people to know where to start? Yeah. What is the mitzvah that they should start with?
That's so great. That's such a great question. I've never subscribed to an all or nothing Judaism. It's pretty clear, I think, from both biblical and rabbinic literature, as far as we can understand God's will, that God would want some Torah than no Torah, some Shabbat than no Shabbat. Now, I hope you didn't get the impression in reading like the prayer, like you're just a terrible Jew unless you do the whole siddur.
No, I have my parents to remind me that I'm a terrible Jew. I don't need a book to.
We're here for you too, Shai. But I think people have to find, and I just spoke about this last Shabbat, people have to find what resonates with them. You always start from your strength. The late and great Rabbi Abraham Isaac Kook, first chief rabbi of Israel, said that when you find the piece of Torah that speaks to you, that is an indication that you've perhaps stumbled upon your special letter in the scroll. That's a language of Rabbi Sachs. But Rav Kook believed that everyone has an aspect of their soul somehow connected with the Torah. So what I always tell my students is find the part of Judaism that really resonates with you. It could be Shabbat, it could be this, or within Shabbat, what aspect? And it could be not only positives, because there's a lot of value in refraining from certain things in life as well. And build on that. And try not to beat yourself up for not doing something else. That's the Yetzer Hara within us. Mm-hmm. That's the little Satan within us, the guy with the black and a little fire. He's just like, you're not good enough. You're not doing the whole thing. That is a very important device that the Satan uses to keep us from doing more. Because what makes us feel like we want to do more is when we feel good about what we are doing. So start with something you love, something in here, but don't stop there. Rosh Hashanah is in 2 weeks. The whole point is to get a little uncomfortable because you can't grow at the gym, physically or spiritually, in synagogue, at MJE, wherever. You can't grow if you don't get out of your comfort zone. But it's a very fine balance. Because if you go too much out of your comfort zone and you start beating yourself up for not doing enough, then you're going to end up taking steps backwards.
Yeah, I have to tell you, so if you don't know me, I also have a very against all or nothing approach to Judaism. I guess I'm closer to the nothing. You're closer to the all. But this is where we meet. I started in the past year to observe some things about Shabbat. So in addition to Kiddush, in addition to lighting the candles, in addition to the challah, in addition to all of that, I've started turning off my cell phone on Shabbat and don't touch it until Motzei Shabbat, and no screens. And that was, at first, that was very easy. It was fulfilling. It was fun. And then summer arrived. And I never realized how long Shabbat is over the summer.
It's just more on Saturday than Friday.
And I thought to myself, wow, now I have way more appreciation for observant Jews. At the same time, it made me have more pride in what I'm doing, not less. Because it was very easy, or relatively easy, to do, observe the small thing that I observe when the sun, comes down at 4:30 p.m. All of a sudden, when I have to wait till 9 p.m., it forced me to really think about, why am I doing this? What is going on here? Wow. And in a way, it did solidify, I guess, my own personal Jewish experience in that way. Wow. So I really resonate with that. One of the things that I've noticed in this book is you talk a lot about the emotional part, the passion of prayer, the really connecting, and yet you use a lot of analytic language in the book. Now, when I was reading it, I was almost imagining the struggle that you as a writer are experiencing of like the analytical mind and the emotional mind, and how to explain the emotions with reason. Do you see that tension as something that's productive, that's helping you, or is it something that actually you wish wasn't there in the first place?
I wish it wasn't there as much. I'm very cerebral, and it can get in the way of prayer. Because prayer, the Talmud teaches, is avodah shebelev, it's service of the heart. It's not supposed to be a cognitive, intellectual exercise. Now, of course, and one of my teachers in Israel, Rabbeinu, always would say that the Siddur is the text for Jewish philosophy. You want to know what Judaism has to say? Read the prayer book. So, of course, there's a lot of heady ideology in the prayer book, but when you pray, it's supposed to be an emotional experience. Rav Nachman of Breslov famously taught that when we daven, we should almost be like children, like not overthinking things. And I suffer from that. So it's hard because I'm trying to like bury the thoughts on some level, if you will, and just allow my heart to be connected. But that doesn't come naturally to me. So you picked up on that.
Yeah, and where it shows up is when you write about prayer, which I have to say personally was maybe the most difficult chapter for me, not because of you, because of me. But there was a moment that really caught my attention, and that's when you start writing about when prayer doesn't work. Yeah. And that's where you can really see your cerebral analysis jumping in. So I thought that was so beautiful. I thought maybe you want to share a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's really important that we understand that prayer, an aspect of prayer are bakashot. We ask things from Hashem. But what happens when we ask and we don't get? And I'm sure everyone in this room has asked for something at some point, legitimate. Not like just money or, I don't know, something superficial, but something, the health of somebody else. And so actually it's a very powerful teaching. I've shared it in my prayer class about that we're supposed to praise Hashem before we ask anything. And the Gemara asks me, Minalan, where do we know this from? And the Gemara answers, in Moshe. Tichsiv, we learned this from Moses. When did Moshe pray for something, didn't get what he wanted? Going into the land of Israel. The text doesn't say this, but in the Midrashas, he prayed 550 times. God said, it's enough with the prayers, you're not going in. So why do the rabbis quote that as the proof text, as the biblical source for praising Hashem before you pray? I mean, there's so many other prayers that worked, if you will. You know, Penina was desperate for a child, and she prayed, and she got a child. Why don't the sages quote that? And my friend Shalom Baum, I just spoke with today, it's a rabbi in Teaneck, he said, because the rabbis want us to get used to praying even when the prayers are not favorably received. Because that's not why we're davening fundamentally. Rav Soloveitchik said that we're praying to be connected. That doesn't mean you shouldn't ask for things you want. And that is a very important part of tefillah. But we're not praying to somehow wheedle something from Hashem. And that's frustrating because, you know, in our concrete lives, and that's why, by the way, prayer is a very hard thing to sell. We have a beginner's minyan every Shabbat, and we're always, I don't want to say pulling teeth to get people to come. We, Baruch Hashem, have a beautiful, you know, congregation here, but it's not like people are flocking to come and daven, you know. Yeah. And that's because people like seeing concrete results from the effort they put in. And you can't always see that when you daven. But I'll say the same thing goes for our relationships. You can't have a relationship with another human being if you don't talk to them and if you don't really intimately speak with them. How are you supposed to do that, even if you don't get what you want? And that's really the purpose, ultimately, of tefillah.
Right. And you also mentioned something that I found, again, in the theme of community, that even if we don't get something that we want, we may be getting something with someone else, for someone else's benefit. Yeah. Which brings me to the other side of prayer. We're approaching the high holidays, the 10 days, and the prayers that ask not for something, but actually for forgiveness. And you mentioned something there, but again, one of these snippets of wisdom that I thought was really brilliant. When we ask for forgiveness on Yom Kippur, when you read the list, I would be surprised if anyone is guilty of all those things. If someone's guilty of all those things, they're probably not in this room. And yet you have a very interesting explanation for why, you know, we ask for forgiveness for a list of things that I've never even thought about doing. You know, crimes I've never thought of committing. I can share it, but I think it'd be better coming from the rabbi than from me.
No, we take responsibility for everyone. See, I grew up like this. I had the honor, I wanted to say something in memory of my parents tonight, because I had the great honor of growing up in a home where I was taught that we are really one people. And that if you come to synagogue on Yom Kippur, and you got your list of things that you want to work on, and this is what I did wrong, and this is what, and you don't think about what's going on in Israel, and you don't think about those soldiers on the front lines right now. You don't daven for all those widows who lost husbands in these last few months, and there's something missing. Prayer is supposed to really bind us, and that's why we say Hashem l'bagan. I didn't do that. I'm not that rotten, but there is a Jew somewhere in the world that has, and we take responsibility. That's why, by the way, it's not a coincidence. Hashem l'bagan gazalnu, all of the parts of the confessional, the vidui, follows the Hebrew alphabet, Aleph through Taf, A through Z. It's supposed to represent the totality of human transgression that any Jew anywhere in the world, intergenerationally, could have ever committed. Now, you'll say, what does that have to do with me? It has everything to do with me.
Right. So, in that same thread of Kol Yisrael Aravim Ze Leze, that we're all responsible for each other. There are a lot of rifts right now in the Jewish world.
Yeah.
And part of, and I've traveled a lot around the country in the past 2 years now, and everyone talks about interfaith experiences with churches, with mosques, and not a lot of people are talking about intra-faith experiences of Jews of different denominations, of different views. Where do you see us as a people going in the next, not till Mashiach, but in the next 5 to 10 years?
Just want to welcome my brother, Michael, who just came. Thank you, Michael. Just talked about mom and dad. Where do I see us going? Where do I want to go?
As a professor, I have to say, now you've got to answer 2 questions.
After October 7th, there was a very positive sense of achdus, as you know, unity.
Yeah.
And it seems to be coming apart to some degree. Now, I do want to say something that before October 7th, there was a rally over the judicial review in Israel, very controversial. And I saw there were groups that were in favor of it, there were groups against it. And but those groups were talking to each other, and the press does not report that. I don't know if you remember, I remember this 2005 when Israel left the Gaza Strip. 7,500 Jews were removed, some forcibly from their homes in the Gush Katif. And there were Israeli soldiers that were told to do this. And they were literally pulling Jews out of their homes. And you had every stripe on both sides. You had religious soldiers, you have not religious soldiers. You have people in the Gush Katif, mostly observant Jews. And it was, and they were fighting and screaming, and it was time to daven mincha, pray. And they all daven mincha together. Nobody reported that. I saw that, and I know people that were there at the minyan. And we have to remember that that is still there. And we have to galvanize on that. And we have to remember that the stuff that's in this book, that's what unites us. Yeah. And we're never going to see eye to eye in everything. 2 Jews, 3 opinions. So what Lizzie spoke about before, we have to learn to continue to love and respect each other. You asked me this question on your podcast. You're not asking me now, so I'm not going to get to it. But, is there a line? Is there someone we wouldn't welcome here in MG? Someone is at a pro-Hamas rally and all that? Okay, there are extremes and maybe exceptions to what I'm saying. But generally speaking, we got to love each other so much more now. And irrespective of our ideology, Kol Yisrael Aravim Ze Leze, all Jews are responsible, doesn't say if you're like this, if you're not like that. And we were just in Israel a few weeks ago. There is a tremendous amount of achdus that does not get reported. If it bleeds, it leads. And no one is writing beautiful articles about beautiful, camaraderie between less observant Jews in the army, more observant Jews in the army. And of course, that other issue is quite a divisive issue. I have my own personal opinion about it, but even I feel very strongly Jews should be serving, obviously, but we have to learn to still see the other side and love and respect other people, even when it's painful.
And I have to emphasize, just because you mentioned it, you don't just talk, you live it. So I just learned that your son is in the Hashmonaim brigade, which is the new Haredi brigade in the IDF.
And I just found out, I was talking to Yehuda this morning, and I said, did you know that I think it was a boy from Hashmonaim who took out the terrorist that just killed 6 innocents in Israel. He said, yeah, I just had lunch with him. He was in the same base with him, 22-year-old,
when you were talking about the mincha, I was reminded of my grandparents. My grandfather was an atheist. He passed away a long time ago. My grandmother was a believer. She passed away a couple of months ago. And that created a lot of interesting dynamics in the family. So I have everything, I have Shasniks in the family, I have Chilonis, like everything. And as a kid, we would come for my grandparents for Shabbat dinner, whatever politics was going on, everybody would be arguing, screaming, shouting. And then my grandfather, who was not a believer, said, enough, osim kiddush. Right? And it was almost like a reset.
Oh my God.
It was almost like a reset, like reminding us, yes, sometimes it's fun to complain and argue and fight and show the other side why you're right and they're wrong. But that's not why we came here. We came here to be a family. So I really like that.
That's a great analogy, because families fight, but they stay together.
Hopefully, yeah.
Bezrat Hashem.
Is there anything that didn't make it into the book that you
Yeah, I have
wanted?
2 other volumes I want to write. This is only 6 topics, and
You got to tell me in advance,
12.
because I don't know if I can
I
do
have.
lunch.
I want to write. Yeah, there's a lot that's not in here.
What,
I'm a slow
you
writer.
want to maybe 1 or 2 things that you are looking forward to keep exploring in the Jewish experience?
Yeah, I am. It's taken me a long time. I'm writing a chapter on kashrut and keeping kosher, on also sexuality / taharat mishpacha, laws of family purity, just all this stuff. A lot of you that are sitting here tonight have been to a lot of my basic Judaism classes I've been teaching for the last almost 30 years. I want to give a shout out to my, he couldn't be here tonight, but Rabbi J.J. Schachter, who many of you know, he spoke just a couple of months ago at MGE. He really encouraged me to write this. And my mentor and teacher that I grew up with, Rabbi Joseph Grunblatt of blessed memory, he was our family rabbi. It was really under his tutelage that I started this basic Judaism class. And I started with some ideas from Rabbi Danin, from To Be a Jew, from Herman Woke, and just other materials that I picked up from my teachers and my own learning. I don't even know where to start. This book is just the touch of the surface. But I will say, what I really am proud of in the book is that at the end of each chapter, I give you 6 or 7 other books to read that I think are really, really great on that topic, excuse me.
And as a nerdy professor, I love that. But I did want to, you're really like helping with the questions, because these are all planned. So I assume a lot of people here have read your previous books, Beyond the Moment, which is geared more toward, I guess, Judaism in 21st century.
Yeah.
For someone who's read that book, and we're asking themselves, well, should I be reading Rabbi WIldes' book, the new book? I say yes, but what should they expect if it wasn't covered there? Or
I think this is that book was really written to demonstrate Judaism's contemporary relevance in the modern world. Mindfulness and the other things people are looking everywhere but their Judaism. And so there are 10 different lessons there and Beyond the Instant. What I wrote here was really to drill down on what the classics have to say about God, how to find God, both externally, both internally. Why do we believe, why do rabbis continue to preach that the Torah comes from a higher place? Do we have any evidence of that? And a lot of confusion about the Masorah, about the Shalshelet HaKabbalah, which is the transmission of the oral tradition. People who've gone to yeshiva their whole lives, very, very confused part of our tradition, and I try to clarify it in there. The class on Tefillah, like you pointed out, the how-to section, so many people are coming to davening, but we're not really plugging into what this section of prayer is intended to convey. What's the feeling and the sentiment we're trying to cull from this area? And what do you do when you pay a shiva kol, God forbid, or somebody's in the hospital? What's the Jewish protocol? Because there's a lot of wisdom there. And I didn't just mean in the book, I meant in Torah. And lastly, Shabbos. It's all about Shabbos. Shabbos is, more Jews have come into Judaism or abandoned Judaism by either accepting or relinquishing their Sabbath observant. And I think I'm just so proud to hear about what you shared about your Shabbat observance. And by the way, your kids are going to be thanking you one day.
Well, the interesting thing is, maybe TMI, but my wife and kids they're on their screens, we're on the phones, and I found that the best way is to just me do my thing and portray what I'm doing.
Right.
And if they want to be with me, then it can't involve a screen, and that motivates them to get off their phone or off the screens. And I liked, for me, one of the things that really brought me to this is the quote. I think it's Echad Ha'am who said, "More than the Jews keep the Shabbat keeps the Jews."
Yeah.
That it keeps us going. So I'm going to end with one final question. I hope it's okay. I don't know. In my mind, it's a great question. But so there's a famously Rabbi Hillel was asked, can you teach me the Torah on standing on one foot, right? If I asked you can you teach me the Jewish experience standing on one foot? What would that be?
I hope this doesn't sound too vague. But it's
I don't know how long you can stand on one foot. That's up to you.
I think that the Torah and mitzvot were given to us to really get in touch with our deepest part of who we are. The other part, I'm sorry, I'm going to give you two answers. And the other part is our task and our mission to reveal some of Hashem's light in an otherwise pretty dark world. And I think to go through our short lives without knowing how to tap into who we really are is the greatest shame in the world. We have such a beautiful part of us called the soul, but you need a mechanism to connect with the soul, to express the soul, to really understand deeply, metaphysically, why we were created. And I think the whole Torah and Mitzvos is designed to give us, it's a roadmap to the soul, and it's also our task and our privilege to bring that to the rest of humanity, to be able to express some of God's wisdom, His divinity, His spirituality in a very, very physical world. We didn't have to be created, period. God was fine. I know that doesn't sound so nice, but it wasn't like He was lonely. He was fine when the world was just filled with His eternal light. He created us so that to benefit us, to give us the great nachas of being connected to something deeper, Hashem Himself, and to be able to reveal that to the rest of humankind. And we brought that message to humanity. And now humanity is turning on us. And it's forcing us to ask ourselves, who are we? Why are we here? We are here to be connected to the deepest part and to bring light to a dark world. But you need to know how to do it. And Judaism is the science. Torah and mitzvot, I really believe, is the science to do that.
I don't think there's a better way of ending this. I would just say, especially for young people, everyone's looking for experiences. Everyone's subscribing to different, boxes they get at home every month to get a different experience for traveling around the world. And I think it's good that people are focusing on experiences rather than just sheer materialism. But I hope that more people will read this book and focus not just on the experience, but on the Jewish experience. I'll end with words by, I think it was Ed Koch when he was running for mayor. He said, if you agree with 7 out of the 12 things that I just said, vote for me. If you agree with 12 out of the 12 things I just said, check yourself into a mental health. You don't have to agree with everything, but you need to give everything your time of day, think about it, see how it relates, where it finds you. And thank you so much. I'll be waiting for the next 2 books.
Shai, thank you so much.
So glad.
We have time. Thank you, Shai. By the way, I wish Ed Koch was still alive and he'd run for mayor again. Any questions that we can? Any questions that anyone has for Shai? Yes.
Hi, I'm wondering if the two of
Ooh,
I would
what are
love
you doing
that.
Tuesday night?
I would love that. I think, in general, I think more things like this. I wish more, like, and I'm completely serious about the intra-faith. I think this book needs to be read not just by modern Orthodox or whatever label you give yourself. It should be read by Reform and conservative Jews and secular Jews. And there are books that we should all should be learning more about ourselves and each other. So.
Yeah, I want you to know that it's interesting. The publisher, Corin, writes for predominantly modern Orthodox kind of audience. And the reason they asked me to write this up, they said this to me at the time, was they wanted to get this out to a broader audience. And they know that at MG we attract, young men and women from outside of the Orthodox world, which is something we're really proud of here. And that's an incredibly important thing. And going back to what you said before about, how things will continue to develop between different types of Jews. The way you just put that, the 7 out of the 12. Because there's so much we could learn from each other, and we don't have to agree on everything to be able to really see the value in one another.
Agree.
Yeah.
Whole as opposed to what's here, and how would you critique the Jewish experience in practice?
I mean, I just think that we are, they say that we work at what percentage of our mind energy, I'm killing this here, help me out here, any neuroscientists in the
I think we could say we're less smart than we think we are.
No, I mean that, like, what percentage of our brain power do we actually use?
Yes.
I think it's the same thing in the Jewish community. I mean, we do not have enough of our talent out there proactively being Jewish, whether they become observant, they don't become observant. And what we've seen over the last 26 years here at MJE is if you invest in other Jewish people that may not be so connected or affiliated, you will see such raw talent, such power coming out. And we can go from 10% to 20% to 50, 100%. That's the Mashiach as far as I'm concerned, where we're operating on a 100% level. And I feel like, we're connected, Shai, you and I, because we don't necessarily agree on everything, but we have certain fundamentals that we really feel strongly about. And I just feel the community would be so much stronger if we were more biyachad. We've become so polarized all over the world, Israel and America, and diaspora.
I agree. I actually start with a very simple question that I pose to a lot of people. And I don't want you to answer this, just I want you to think about this for yourself. If you step out of this building now by yourself and someone sees you on the street, they don't know what this building is, they don't know what's happening, would they know that you were Jewish? Probably they'd know about me with this shirt. I always wear my Magen David, but would they know? And I think that's the start. Not only because it's a source of pride and joy that we put out in the world, but also it signals to other Jews that there's someone like me out there, right? There are men, there are women here, there are people that are older, there are people that are younger, there are people of different racial groups, but it doesn't matter. If we all showed the world, hey, I'm Jewish, I'm not afraid, I'm proud of being Jewish, then someone who is like us and might feel alienated might say, you know what, I'm going to start doing that as well. And I think that's the first step. Now, that's not the solution. It's the first step to then we need to have these very difficult conversations, but instead of shying away from them. But first, we all have to be in the same room together.
Beautiful. Thank you.
There was a discussion about Yom Kippur and the questions and the asking for absolution or forgiveness in the prayers. And I think the comment you made, Rabbi, was, well, even if we didn't do it, there's some Jew out there who may have. My question is, are we only asking for the forgiveness for Jews or for anyone? It doesn't have to be just another Jew out there who committed this sin. It could be anyone else.
It's interesting. Rosh Hashanah is considered Yom Hadin, Day of Judgment, for the Jewish people specifically. So I think it is for the Jewish people. Having said that, Rabbi Soloveitchik wrote, and I have this in here actually in the Tikkun Olam section, we read a very strange part of the Torah, Maftir Yonah, the book of Jonah, who was a Jewish prophet sent to inspire a non-Jewish city to repent. And Rabbi Soloveitchik said the reason we're reading that on Yom Kippur is because we're so involved in our particularistic Jewish community, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, as we should be, that we shouldn't forget that our responsibility is not only to the Jewish community. That it should matter if, a lot of people are taking the attitude, and I'm not saying I blame everyone, that, the heck with this country, I'm out of here. I'm going to make Aliyah, and that's great, the Aliyah part, but I don't think it's an appropriate response for a Jew to not care about what happens morally and ethically in other parts of the world. We are supposed to be in a light amongst the nations. It's supposed to bother us if immorality and we should not only be upset with what's happening in these pro-Hamas rallies because it's threatening us, and it is. We should be upset because young people's minds have been turned upside down and corrupted, and that should bother us as the moral conscience of the world. And so Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur is really specifically for slicha and kapara for the Jewish community, but we're not supposed to stop. And it's hard, you can get easily jaded when everybody's ganging up on you. Who the heck cares about everyone else? But we're really not given that luxury.
If I may add,
Yeah.
the one thing is also, while Yom Kippur is focused so much on the wrongs that we and other Jews have done, there's also someone who's been wronged, and that person could be a non-Jew, right? And at least the way I was raised to think about Yom Kippur is you can pray and ask for forgiveness as much as you can, but if you have not done the Adam lechavero, like one to another person, and ask for their forgiveness, nothing is going to be achieved. No one else can forgive you other than that person. So the goal is, in the end of the day, to improve ourselves, not just for our benefit, but for everyone's benefit.
In the back. I mean, I think those are two different things. I do believe we're supposed to be a light to the world, but I don't understand any kind of Jewish sentiment that we were meant to suffer. I mean, that was... No, I'm not saying Viktor Frankl didn't say that he didn't believe some people were feeling that. But that is not, we were meant to be a light. We were meant to bring joy and life to the world.
I've struggled with that thought, like we keep saying, like we say we're the chosen one, maybe that's why people don't like us, and I've struggled a lot with that. Actually, this I'm not related to this, I'm just reading this. Sapir, the Jewish thought journal, has an entire, its newest volume is about chosenness. The view that I have found most helpful is chosenness doesn't mean that we're special, doesn't mean that we're important. It means that just like you choose your kid or your employee based on your belief in their ability to be up for the task, not because they're the best or your favorite, but because you believe they have the skill and the will. I like to think about that in the term of chosenness, that we have chosen or have been chosen because we can do this. Sometimes it involves suffering, but sometimes it involves a lot of joy. You talked about Tikkun Olam and the idea of sending to Nepal after the earthquake, to Turkey. And I've had the chance to talk with some of the soldiers, the medics that come back, and they're exhausted, they're drained, and they're filled. They're filled with joy. So, maybe the extremist case that you mentioned from Viktor Frankl's book, that is an extreme case. But in most of our experiences, there is a little bit of suffering and a lot of joy.
We're going to bring this to a close. Thank you very much, Shai. I want to just, on that, if it's okay, I really think psychologically and emotionally, we need some better way of dealing with all of the anti-Israel venom and hate, other than pushing back like Shai does a really good job at. And we should continue to do that, but not to put all of our eggs in that basket, because it's an uphill battle. And there are a lot more of them than us, and it's been going on a long time, and it's not going to end.
Yeah.
What we could do is lean further in. I'm going to quote Omri, my friend Omri Dahan, that was his language. He said to me, this is the time to lean in as a Jew, to be proud. And how do you feel proud? You express pride by wearing a Magen David, a kippah. But to feel pride internally, you have to build yourself up from within. And the way to do that is become knowledgeable. And this book is just one piece of that. It's Rosh Hashanah in 2 weeks. We should all take on something new to learn, to strengthen ourselves. And when we're seeing something that's really getting us down and upsetting us, open up that Jewish book. Come to a minyan on Shabbat. Celebrate your Judaism. It's such a more healthy and positive way of reacting and responding to anti-Semitism than just lashing back out, which is probably not going to be terribly productive. Learning more, and the greatest revenge on our enemies. That because of what they do to us, we have just become that much more learned and powerful and proud. Thank you all for being here tonight.
And I should say, just for people that are still looking to buy Rosh Hashanah gifts for family, that's a great gift.
We didn't even think to say that. Guys, thank you all for coming.